Okay, so my storage space in my phone was full, so this is part two, which was 20 minutes, 21 minutes. So this is still talking about these guys. Love my college teachers. I'm gonna make a blog about that. But these guys. So back to these guys. So the story specifically about these characters are is a love story throughout time. And what I wanted to do was leave it really open to just like let the story flow and not have a real idea of what I want to say through the story. Like I didn't want to, you know, I like I said, I came from a Christian background, so I, I had my ideas of what I believed religion wise, but I didn't believe what society was telling me about the Aztecs. From what I got in the books that and it was very limited information, and it still is to me. Like I haven't researched it a lot because every book that I've gotten from Barnes and Noble or whatever is like it's totally like just first of all super limited. There's like and then this was like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, so I don't know. I haven't even really, but everything that I've seen and read, I have yet to like get a really good book that has like is not super biased or written by like a Chinese person or something. Like it's always like white people and Chinese people that write about the Aztecs and make books about them and tell us how terrible we are and how we eat children and you know sacrifice everybody, and I just don't believe it. I mean, and as I learned anyway, so that's that story. It'll be in this books about my ideas of as I've matured. Um, so basically, the story turned into multiple worlds where there's three worlds. This is early on. I created this idea of like, okay, I want to visually, I want to create watercolors. I want drawing. I want painting. And I was even thinking film and like everything, photographs, anything will be okay to tell the story. There's no limits to how I want to tell the story, and so it was just basically my project that I intended to work on forever, and always going to be something that I could explore my culture with, and it being a love story, so it was like okay, so basically when they're kids, which was more fairy tale world where like no time. There's no time. It's open to. It's not based in any time. So and so that's this book. This first book, and I wrote down all the whole script of like from the beginning till the end. It didn't have quite an ending, but it does have like a whole like the next part of this book is like super intense and like super like goes into the world that they're the fairy tale world. Like right now, it's just kind of them waking up and them kind of showing who the characters are, not showing anything like not really getting into the actual story of how they really meet or how they of their adventure into the world and what they learn, how they affect the world and stuff. So that's it's a lot of work. So I if I could just draw it out of my mind, it would be awesome. but I can't. I have to take time to actually do that. You know, making the first book was so much work. So that's this first book. And then the other part of the story was a future world where they're, you know, growing up, and they're it's more end of the world action, guns, and, you know, more into that, like, you know, we call it dystopia or whatever you want to call that, but basically like apocalyptic, or well, I don't know, not, that's a terrible word. Sorry, I watched the movie and it was alright, but anyway, not close to what I wanted, how I view the story. But anyways, but more futuristic, Mad Max kind of world-ish. I don't know, not really that either. But anyway, so that's Nezahual's the second world. And the third world is where I explore the actual Mesoamerican time, where they're actually in that time, the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Toltecs, you know, and that's the heart of the story, really. That's like, for lack of a better term, the meaning of, that's where the reason to do these books. Like I can do those. I can do those same characters in the first two worlds with anybody. Like they could be any character in any. Like I can use that in a Hulk story, or I can use that in a, you know, Batman story, whatever the story. But the Mesoamerican part is a reason, and so that's what the third world. But it's kind of in all the stories, obviously, and that's why it's the most important part. But specifically in that time, so that's where this story is a little bit, because I was like working on this for so long, and I had drawings of this one, but I didn't have like, I did have some here and there. They were scattered, like storyline. It wasn't like, okay, this is the book, this is the pages that I'm working on. You know, it was never that. So when I started working on this book, was already in my 20s, and I was like, okay, I'm going to what do you call it? You know, make it so cool that everybody's gonna love it, and, you know, it's not gonna be boring, and, you know, so. But, you know, I was trying to earn a living, you know, all this stuff like that, and trying to, you know, go to school and pay rent and everything. So that took longer, and that so the first part of the story, like, there's the Mesoamerican part, which I was already like 27, like, and this guy was like, for Fifth Sun, I was working for Fifth Sun, which they're a big company that does like stuff for everybody, Disney, Santana, everybody. Like, they do t-shirts for everybody, and they're based in Chico. So this guy was like, yo, you know, do some ideas for me. I do Chicano stuff too. Like, his brother made the homies, like the toys, the homies. So, and he was getting artists from Disney and all that stuff. So he was like getting big time. And I was just a guy, and he was like, and I knew I was a good artist. I was like, hey man, I'm gonna, you know, I can do Chicano stuff. That's what I want to do. And, yo, hire me. And so he gave me a chance. You know, I did some designs and whatnot, and then he was like, oh, do this comic book stuff for me. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I had gotten with this girl that I was with, and so she was like, hey, move to San Francisco with me, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh man, I just got all these jobs, and all right, you know. So I go with her to San Francisco, and the guy was like, why the heck, you know, you're leaving? I thought you were gonna stay around here, and, you know, I'm not happy about that. And I was like, well man, I'll do the comic book, but I'm going. And so for 30 days, and like, it was such a sweet deal. Like the guy was like, "Yo, I'm gonna give you all this money and all this great stuff," and I was like, "Oh yeah, sounds great," but I'm leaving. I'll do the comic book. So I give him these ideas, these really cool pages. Like they were like really good work. He still has them. I'm pretty sure. I don't have them. He actually kept the. But he was like, "Oh, that's not the." He wanted me to do Cuauhtemoc, which I was like, "All right." Well, he said he showed me some pictures. He was like, "Hey, here's Cuauhtemoc, and I want you to make some superhero story to this, and I want to do something." And I was like, "All right." And I gave him a page I gave him an outline of the story. And it wasn't super actiony, but it wasn't Cuauhtemoc. It was just a character, like, but it wasn't. So I gave him the story, and then he was like, all right, and then I gave him pages. Or what was it? I forget exactly. Okay, so I gave him some drawings, the first ones, and he was like, okay, these are good, but I don't want this and that, and like the original story I gave him. I was like, what? Or something, I forget. And basically, I gave him the next story, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this because I got 30 days, I gotta pay the rent, and this is the story I'm gonna do. Then, if that's what you want, change the story, completely change the story. Like I was like, okay, just basic action, okay. So I did it in like 30 days. It took all the whole month to like do this work. I don't know if it took the whole month, but it took like till the end of that month. And I was like, okay, I need to get paid. I need to pay the rent. And showed it to him, and he was like, as soon as I got back to Chico from San Francisco, he was like, it's not what I want. I'm not gonna pay you. Or no, he already paid me. He gave me a computer to work on, and he gave me some money, but he didn't give me the rest of the money. And I was like, dude, I just drew all this stuff. You said this is what you wanted. I gave you the storyline. He's like, no, I can't use it. It's not what I want. I'm not gonna pay you the rest of the money, or something. And this was like in person. And then we emailed each other. Or no, yeah. And then he's like, I'm gonna keep the drawings though and scan them or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. And so. And we had a contract before that, and I was like, hey, I'm working on this Nezahual and Rhayne story, and I'm gonna, because he was like, oh, you can't do any Aztec stuff for like 5 years or 10 years, and I was like, well, I'm already working on stuff, and he was like, oh, okay, well, except for that book, and I was like, all right, so I do the Mesoamerica part of this story, and he doesn't want it, and he says, I'm not going to use it, and I really just hired you to draw as many drawings as you can of Mesoamerica stuff. There's not really a lot of Mesoamerica stuff, Aztec stuff in symbology in here, and it's just these guys with capes, or like not, and it was black and white, and it was pen and ink, or it was like ballpoint pen really, and so I was just like, man, okay, so this guy don't want it. I worked really hard on all this stuff, and you're not gonna pay me. I was like, okay. I emailed him. I was like, hey, I'm gonna use it for my book. Then, and if you want, I'll draw you another one. Just pay me right now And he was like, no, I'm not gonna pay you. Do what you want to do with it, but I'm not gonna forget it. Like I already talked to my partners, and they said to stay with T-shirts. Don't even go into comic books. So forget the project. And I was like, and so I was just like, dude, now I have no job. I'm working over here I was working in San Francisco with my girlfriend at the time, but so half my money went away, and so all this great opportunity to be rich and famous, and he was like, oh, I'll get you in Lowrider magazine, and I was like, so I left all that to go live with this girl, and and whatever, I don't know, now that I look back on all this drama, there was like still drama back then, so I don't really know exactly what was going on at that time, but I do know that so I used it for this book, and I barely even finished it like last year. Like my life has been crazy, and I've actually finished like there's 300 other pages of other comics that I've almost finished completed in those books back there, and albums, and so I've done other art, did like 20 murals. So it's not that I haven't been making art. It was just that comic books weren't paying the bills, so I was working on other stuff. So finally, so I was like, so I kind of metamorphosized. I did the third part of it where it's more that future world, and so I mixed it all together and finally edited it up and tried to get it to a story where it fits these characters. So it was kind of like, okay, how do I make the story make sense, or how do I make the story fit together? And that's how this book ended up being jumbled into action and action and action. So I barely have any words for this. This book don't have that many words. So I just tried to, and which was part of the story, like artists know, if you throw some paint on there and see what happens, see if it turns into something, and that's what it turns into. So anyway, so that's what these books are, and that's why they're created, and that's what they are right now. So these two books. They're like 72 pages each. So this story is when they're kids. He's an orphan. Well, they're both orphans actually, but he is, which was crazy. Okay, so things get crazy in my art life and my real life. Like, so I didn't know anything about his actual story until I read some stuff on the internet. But like I drew these pages, and parents die, and later in life people make fun of me and like, oh, okay, his parents like Batman, they died like Batman, and they kind of did look like that. They kind of have that scene where his parents die like Batman, like he's in the city, but there's soldiers that kill him, and so it's a different storyline. But that symbology of your parents dying, being alone in the world, it was there. And it's funny because now I'm working on a Zorro story, so it's like it's kind of how it works together. Okay, so that's his story, and he doesn't speak, and that was like, I don't know why, but he just was mute. And I think through all this time, like, I did watch Akira, but it wasn't the same character. He's not the same character. He was more based off of me and my personality and whatever. And I did want to name my kid Nezahual. Like, when I was with my son's mom, I told her since I met her, I was like, I'm gonna name Nezahual. And at the end, when we had the kid, she didn't name him at the hospital. When I signed the papers and named the kid, and she was like, no. Or no, it was a little bit before that. So we came up with Isaiah. I'm thinking like in a week or two. I don't know how long it was, but it was not, like, I didn't name my kid Nezahual. Like, in front of the nurse and the doctor, and we had that little fight about it. Anyway, so, but the kid, this character was always based off of me. I was a shy kid, whatever. But so this character, that's his story. He gets raised from the dead. I don't know why. Like I said, that probably came from the Kira part where he's just I don't know. Anyway, so it's a lot of the book is intuition. So she is more of the, and in my culture and what I, my family structure, the women the woman is always the strong one, not strong one in the family, but like, you know, just is very the household, carries the household, something like that. And, you know, it's very strong woman, and that's what I know. So she is that, and she's a writer. You know, she was a smart woman. He's more of a shy, you know, powerful, but still like unsure and whatnot. She is sure of herself, even though she hides it. She's very sure and very outgoing, more outgoing, very outgoing. So that goes through the first chapters of her life, and as she goes through the second part of the story, it's going to show that more, and her struggle too. Like the first book is more based on him, and I added a chapter in there to kind of go through more of, to make it even so that they both have their story. But I think the book is more about him, and well, not really, but like she has yet to leave the orphanage or the factory or whatever you want to call it. Like, so the next book is gonna go through her journey, and her journey is actually more clear. I kind of want to talk about it, but I probably shouldn't. So she's gonna it's gonna turn, the fairy tale thing is really her story, like, or I guess both. So she's gonna go and meet the king and the queen and the basically this big old armies that are gonna fight, and she's gonna be part of that storyline. He's gonna be part of the circus and join, like, and be like street guy. Like, she goes on the journey with like super rich people. He's like hanging out with the street people, and still like not talking, and just sees the side of the world, or sees of that city just from the street. And so that's going to be the next part. And but he does play his end. The end of that story, he ends up being in the same realm as her, and that's when they meet again. But I will talk about that in the book. If I get that done, that'll be awesome. So this one, so this is, it's broken up into chapters. So the Nezahual character, the real one, I don't know if this is totally true. I've read it a long time ago, but like his parents actually, like, he was the son of a king and a queen of his, not the Aztecs, but before the Aztecs. Like his real life is super interesting. And so his parents died, and he hid in a tree while they were killed by invading army. So that was like a coincidence. I was like, what? Like, hey, my character parents got killed too in front of him. So that's actually like real. So I was like, whoa, that's cool. Well, you know, or not cool, but I really want to draw that stuff, but I have to wait a little bit to draw that. But so that happened, and he ends up leaving that city and gets taught by the Aztecs and they let him be a king, or they teach him as a royal, and so he gets like the training or the schooling of a high profile person or whatever. So he gets taught through the people that are gonna be the Aztecs. They're not the Aztecs yet, because they're not. There's no such thing as Aztecs yet, or they haven't made that name up or something. So he gets trained, and then he goes back to his old city where they took his over and took his parents or whatever, or killed his parents. And so he goes back over there and like checks it out, and he finds out that they want to kill him you know, they find out the guy that took over his throne is like knows he's in town or something like that. So he's, but there's even like a woman in there like that he liked or loved or whatever that this guy got. And that took a, you know, he's married or whatever. So he's like checking this out and he's like, what's going on here? And so he gets hidden by his people from his city because the king and everything knows he's there and they're gonna get him and kill him. But the people, they recognize him and they know he's like part of the people and the king's son and whatever, the rightful ruler, and they start like hiding him and making sure he's safe, and they get him out of the city. So it goes back to the Aztecs, and this is history. So this is what I know. This before, like, this is like when I first learned about him, like, and I started reading about him. So this is like after I started drawing them and everything, but it was still in my 20s, like. So this is so because I had to get his poems and stuff. So this is when I started reading about him, so researching his poetry, and so he goes back to the Aztec people, wherever, and then during that time, the country that he was at, or his city, they were like kicking everybody's ass. So he was like, "Hey man, let's." So that's where the Triple Alliance comes in, and so the Triple Alliance is these 3 different countries, surrounding countries, come and they get together and they attack that city from the north, south, or I don't know where, but they all come and they kick their ass and they take over the city, which was like some great plan that Nezahual made up. And so when he does that, oh yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so they create like this kingdom that's like this great kingdom. You know, he was like a great poet. First of all, he wrote his poetry. He was like, they say he was the greatest poet, and it was, you know, he created a democracy, or not a democracy. He created a government that had like the scholars and the warriors and the you know, everyone, like different branches of the government, that was like this great government that like really kept things in balance and lasted for, you know, generations, hundreds and hundreds of years after he died. That's when, you know, he created something that was great. That had his aqueducts and like his architecture and everything lasted centuries too. And he was a warrior that was able to, you know, that was a great warrior as well, great fighter. And then yeah, so he was like all these things, and like, you know, had a bunch of wives, had a bunch of kids. So the next guy, his next son that took over, was good too, and so that's kind of like those guys. I think it was like 1400s or something. So that's kind of interesting about these guys, and I really hope I do get to tell that story. Okay, so we're going on half hour, so this is going to be the last one. This one goes into, I wanted to use the Klimt thing, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to use like all the famous paintings and stuff, and European paintings and everything that I've seen in art history, and use the Mesoamerican culture and put them in there and see, and then I'm going to continue to do that. So that's kind of what this based off of. And then the second one was these guys. It was Michelangelo, which, you know, doesn't get much cooler than that, right? But he was dead, you know. So this is like an idea that came up with, and so it goes on to this, and I wanted to talk about, and then so I fixed it up, and it goes on to, so it kind of goes through all these different worlds, through their 3 different worlds. But one thing I did want to say before I end this, before, like, you know, they tell you, give the pitch of the story and compare it to movies that are already there. So this was before The Matrix. This was before that one movie with the Wolverine guy in there. and it had such a similar storyline. And this is like something that, this is part of the weirdness of the world in my life. It's like this, and I think a lot of artists deal with this, but are creative people. It's like almost like people stealing your ideas. Lately, I'm pretty sure people have been stealing my ideas, but during this time when I was a nobody, or before internet, before crazy internet stuff, like these guys, blah, 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 blah. Damn it, what's a movie? It was like Spanish and had like the Buddha guy. He was a Buddha. Hugh Jackman was in it. Forget the name of it now, but the guy was like totally spent a lot of time working on this. It was like his project, and so nobody liked it. I liked it, but nobody else liked it. And that movie was similar, and then Pan's Labyrinth came out like way later. Maybe not too much later, but yeah, it was pretty much way later. But so all those three movies, not really Matrix, but kind of Matrix, but not really. But the first two, those other two movies where they cross worlds and stuff, like really, like I was like, what the heck, dude? Like, guys are like trying to steal my story. So I went through a lot of that, where it's like, okay, these other people came out first, but I've been working on my book way before these guys, and so even though they come out with their version of the story, like I'm gonna continue working on mine. But those ones are like that one with Hugh Jackman was really interesting because it had like the Spanish version and the Aztec. It was the first time I seen Aztecs on the big screen, and I was like, what the heck, dude? These guys are, but they always show them like all like dark and evil. Like white people are always gonna be showing the Native Americans through their vision, or especially the Aztecs and the ones that they're scared of, the civilizations that were like dangerous. Like they're always gonna view them as the other guys, the bad guys or whatever, and that's still happening today. So that's part of the reason I really feel like why I've had to deal with a lot of negativity through my artistic world. So anyways, so that's what these stories are about. Nezahual and Rhayne. I told the dude from Sun I'm using them, Fifth Sun, talked to me. I told him again, I met with him later, I was going to work with him again. So I don't know. But, so their story, that's the storyline. They're on Cosmicology and printed it up, self-publishing, kablam. So people didn't understand what I was talking about, anything. So when I finally finishing these books was such a huge endeavor that like now I can show somebody and be like, hey, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean when I'm talking about this world that nobody understands what I'm trying to say. So that's what this one. And as far as there's this girl that I had met in college, and she lent me her poetry in one of the chapters and she was a really cool person. She lives in San Jose and married, has children and family, but I really appreciate her help and her inspiration. The girlfriend that I was with at the time for the second book, she was also inspiration for the second book, for that character. And so that's kind of, and they're both Mexican girls that I had dated, and we had deep, women that I've loved, and so they're in that story. They're part of my romantic love story thing. So that's kind of what these books are based on, and so that's kind of the whole thing with these. And I think is there anything else? No, the next part will be good. I'm hoping that I gotta finish these next books, because if I do, they're gonna be good and really good, and first of their kind almost. I mean, there's a lot of artists that are catching up and really doing some good work, but I think I'm one of the first ones to really put this idea out there like this, especially with this character, this real person. Okay, peace.